Welcome to Sense of Style. I'm Stuart. Some fragrances, they're just passing through. You pick them up, you wear them for a couple seasons, get a couple compliments, and you never touch them again. But others, they're foundational. They don't just smell good, they fit. They fit your style, and after a while, they become who you are. Here are 6 fragrances you can build a life and a fragrance collection around. Fragrance number 1 is Dior Sauvage Elixir, and this is a truly iconic fragrance of our time. And I always ask myself, how many times in my life did I use the word elixir prior to this being released in 2021? Not many. But since then, the number of times I've used it is exponential. It's literally changed the way we speak about fragrances because it was so incredibly successful. You can call anything elixir, but if it's not successful, it's not going to matter. This thing was iconic, and now everyone uses the word elixir all the time. But that's not the only way it changed the language of fragrances. I've seen this referred to as a neo barbershop. Now, I am normally super protective of the word barbershop because I think a lot of people use the word incorrectly. However, in this particular case, I think they're right because barbershop is built around lavender, and that is a key note here. It's the only note in the heart. Huge amount of lavender in the fragrance. But I think the neo part, that means new, is also correct because this is a very new fragrance and represents a lot of the current trends. What is the biggest current trend? Gourmands. And this is a very gourmandy fragrance. You get a ton of spices off the top, cinnamon, cardamom, and nutmeg. Then you get a lot of amber in the base, a sweet base. That's very, very much part of a gourmand. And then you're going to get what Dior calls the core component of this fragrance, or a core component, which is the licorice. So all 3 are gourmandy elements, but the crazy thing about it is they even used a gourmandy form of lavender. They didn't use the traditional grass lavender. They sent away to another part of Provence called Nyon to get the Nyon lavender, which is non-camphorous. A typical lavender has a sharp, almost medicinal feel that smells like camphor. This Nyon lavender has none of that. In fact, this is more of a vanillic, coumarin-based lavender. It's a sweet lavender, and so that's even a gourmandy style of the critical note that they're using. And to top it all off, Francois Demachy himself has said that this smells like a fine liqueur, another gourmandy element. I mean, I really think the term neo barbershop is a perfect description, and that will be used going forward along with the term elixir. This fragrance is so iconic that if you're into men's fragrances, it has literally changed our language. Fragrance number 2 is Baux Bottle Absolu 2024. And when it comes to designer fragrances for men, I don't think there's been a better house over the last 4 years than Hugo Boss. Whether it's Boss the Scent line or Boss Bottle line, I mean, everything they've done recently has been critically acclaimed, performed really well, and are very popular in the fragrance community. And it's really hard to stand out with that much competition. And yet, this is a standout. This is the fragrance of the Hugo Boss fragrances that everybody wants. Now, it also happens to be the strongest, at least in the Boss Bottle line, because Boss Bottled Parfum and Boss Bottled Elixir are both considered to be parfums, whereas this is a Parfum Intense. Now, Parfum concentration is usually 20% or up. My estimate of this is between 18 and 22% because they're not always 100% accurate, but I think probably leaning more closer to the 22%. But regardless of what the designation is, I think the fact that this is the strongest is backed up by the public. Everyone seems to think this lasts a really long time. It projects really nicely. I certainly feel that way. I think it is a monster when it comes to performance. So it opens with incense and leather. It's got myrrh and patchouli in the mid, and it's got fruity divana in the base. And so it is a very dark fragrance. It's not going to be universally loved. When you look at that top 4 notes, patchouli, incense, leather, and myrrh, they're all dark. They're all dark notes, so it's a very dark fragrance. If you're not into dark fragrances, if you like something fresher, it's probably not going to be your cup of tea, but I think for most people, you know, it'll be a really good evening scent or a really good cool weather scent, and it would fit nicely into any collection that way. Fragrance number 3 is Ralph Lauren Polo for Men. A lot of people call it Polo Green, and this was, in 1978, the very first fragrance that was paired with a female fragrance that were released at the same time. Ralph Lauren for men and for women, because Ralph Lauren wanted to expand beyond just a fashion brand and turn it into more of a lifestyle brand. But the thing that really stands out for this particular fragrance is that pine note. So there's pine, 4 other aromatic notes, including oak moss. You're going to get 3 woody notes. There's leather and tobacco, but the pine note is really fresh. It's very distinct, and it really gives this sort of a classic feel. This has often been referred to as the great American fragrance. Ralph Lauren is an American house, and, it's green, like American money. It's part Ivy League and part Wild West. The Ivy League is that beautiful pine note, and the Wild West is kind of the tobacco and leather rough around the edges. However, the weird thing about this is the connection to the Mediterranean, to Europe, because the perfumer here, Carlos Banim, he grew up in Tangier in Morocco. And so he based the fragrance around 3 notes that he grew up smelling all the time, one of which was pine. And that's really the key note here. And then another thing that connects it to the Mediterranean is the fact that this is generally thought to be the most popular male chypre fragrance that's ever existed. Chypre is the French word for cypress. And a chypre fragrance is dry and mossy, and that's what cypress's vegetation is, dry and mossy. So Cyprus is in the Mediterranean. Tangier is in the Mediterranean, but this is still considered the great American fragrance. And this is the only fragrance for my first year of collecting that when I smelled it, it sent shivers down my spine. I will always own a bottle of this. Fragrance number 4 is Dior Homme Parfum. This is the 2020 version. It's very, very similar to the 2014 version. Generally thought to be like the pinnacle, at least among, hardcore fragrance enthusiasts, the pinnacle of designer perfumery. But it is a very specialty-based fragrance. I said in a recent video that even though this is like one of my favorite fragrances, I don't reach for it often. However, it is my favorite fragrance. And if my house was burning down, despite the fact that I don't wear it all that often, this is the one that I would grab without question. This is the one where if I have to dress up, I put on a tuxedo. There's not anything else I'm reaching for. It's a mixture of iris and ambrette, and a lot of iris. That's kind of like Dior Homme Intense. The difference, though, is just the sheer amount of leather here. It gives it a dark, leathery, potent feel, more masculine, I think, than Dior Homme Intense. You've also got a little elements of oud and orange. It's a very complex fragrance with really good performance. The only reason this has recently been discontinued, I think, is not an indictment of the fragrance itself. It is more an indictment of the house of Christian Dior. As François Demachy left, I think they've been going adrift a little bit. They've been chasing the money lately. I mean, Dior with Fahrenheit, with Sauvage Elixir, they were leaders. They innovated and everybody copied them. Now they're chasing them. So that's what the Dior Homme 2025 is. Unfortunately, it is chasing now the trends, the young people who are really buying a lot of ambery fragrances. It's not a reflection on this masterpiece, and this really is a masterpiece. Fragrance number 5 is Odabo from the house of Occitane en Provence. And at this stage in the video, I always like to put something that is reasonably priced because not everybody has fragrances as the number one priority in their life. And if they want to buy something really good, I think this is a good point in the video to talk about it. And this is a fragrance that's roughly in the $50 range. And I talked about Dior Homme Parfum 2025, which is super popular. A lot of people like it. And this is in the $50 range, like almost a quarter of the price of that. But it's got a very similar vibe. And that's weird because this came out 20 years ago in 2006. But the perfumer is incredibly innovative. She made Gucci pour Homme 2 and a couple of other like really iconic fragrances. And she was way ahead of the time with this one as well. And this smells so similar to what's going on in modern fragrances right now. So you're going to get vanilla and tonka, the warmth of that. You're going to get a nice, fresh cypress note along with a little bit of juniper. But that cypress note is really aromatic. That stands out. And then you're going to get a nice spicy base with black pepper and cardamom. I mean, this fragrance has everything that everybody is wearing right now. But the key to this is there's always going to be a catch, right? And usually it's performance. But this thing performs like a monster. Like 6 to 7 hours for an inexpensive fragrance. That's really good, and a lot of projection. So it smells good. It's very modern smelling. The performance is really good. I mean, the only real drawback is they pretty much, you know, the cap is just this light aluminum cap. They really just made the outside, the superficial elements pretty basic. It's slightly synthetic, but most people won't notice it. And I mean, half the time I don't notice it either. I just think it's just a fantastic fragrance. And ironically, it fits in so perfectly with modern fragrances despite its age. Fragrance number 6, I like, but don't love. However, of all the fragrances in all of Fragcom, my respect for it has grown the most over time because a lot of my viewers are fragrance experts. They really know what they're talking about. And whenever I do a poll, Parfum de Marley Leighton wins in a landslide. Like, people that know fragrances love Layton. And so, honestly, I've had to reflect. I don't know everything about fragrances. I like to think I do sometimes, but I don't. And so I'm listening to people. I've seriously considered getting a bottle of this. And so, I mean, it is a complex fragrance that fits the modern trends. It smells really nice. It performs really well. Women love it. So why not? So yeah, the complexity of this is something special. So it opens fruity. You're going to get apple, mandarin, and bergamot. Then you're going to get a very floral mid with jasmine, violet, and geranium. And then the base, not surprisingly, you've got cardamom, which is, again, super trendy, and a lot of vanilla. And it's a compliment beast. Women really seem to like it. It is a unisex scent. And so women will like to wear it themselves, but they also seem to compliment an awful lot of men on it. And again, as I mentioned before, the performance is really good. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to build a fragrance around, a collection around a fragrance, I mean, Layton is about as good as it gets. And I think this one has just been rising in popularity over time as the world has gotten a little bit more unisex. But I'm less resentful of this one than I am some of the others. But anyway, yeah, so like these are great fragrances where they'd be great first fragrances, like foundational fragrances to build your collection around and to build your style around. So there's a slightly different style. Unfortunately, I tend to skew more cool weather because of where I live, and my tastes tend to be more oriental in their nature, so there's not a lot of fresh fragrances on the list. But I think they're all really good, though. If you wanted to choose one to build your fragrance collection around, I mean, you can't go wrong here. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Take care.